All aboard! Next stop, Chicago Junction.
And welcome to Chicago Junction, the radio program that is about the amazing world of railroading and the many facets of the industry and model railroading. I am your announcer, Brian Valu, and here is our boss, the head of the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network, and the chief electrical engineer, Mr. John DeVita.
Well, thank you very much, Brian. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another broadcast of Chicago Junction from the John DeVita Broadcast Center on the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network and Jack O'Lantern 89.7 WRHS FM Norwich on Monday, October the 16th, the year 2017. Today, the panel will be talking about railroads and model railroads. And now to start today's broadcast, here's our announcer, Mr. Brian.
Well, thank you very much, John. And we are a little short-handed tonight, so please bear with us. I will be filling in as chief dispatcher to try to keep this chaos in check. Mr. Ryan, Jack Ryan, is home still with the medical problem. He's on, doctor's keeping him tied up, so
I think
we wish
John
him
likes
well.
to be tied up.
Well, we'll ask his wife. And I am Brian Valu, your announcer, and I am I'm a model railroader, play with O-Gauge and Garden Railways. I belong to several historical organizations, and I am also retired military and railroader. I was an engineer and conductor, and just like playing with them and learning about the history. And to my right, I have.
I'm Ron Stock, retired library director. Takes Amtrak wherever he goes, and interested in trains probably since I was about 4 feet high. And read quite a few different railroad magazines and model railroad magazines. Interested in HO, although I read all gauges.
Hi, my name's Kevin Berry. I'm a retired Chicago police sergeant and a lifelong Lionel collector and operator, and a director with the Chicagoland Lionel Railroad Club.
And I guess to start off, Rod, do you have something to start us off with?
Yes, a couple of things. One, the first one I'd like to talk about is it was in this month's Model Railroad magazine, which was in November issue, and it was written by one of the, there's 3 authors who have brief columns at the beginning of the magazine, and this person, his name is Brian Solomon, and his article was Making Railroad Photos Great Again. And what he talks about, it's a brief article, it's probably about a 1-page article. And I'll read little portions of it, and then I'll also talk a little bit because I do some railroad photography myself. He spent decades making photographs, traveling with dozens of fellow railroad photographers. I've made countless observations on equipment, style, technique, and employed in the creation of successful pictures. 15 years ago, John Gerber and I wrote a book on the subject. I thought I'd share some of my observations to help you improve your railroad photo techniques. The photographer, not the camera, makes the pictures, yet it helps to have equipment capable of producing high-quality results. Take the time to procure the right equipment while remembering just about just because your pal or favorite pro uses a specific camera system or model, that doesn't mean using the same equipment will allow you to make better photographs. Select a camera that you are comfortable using. Experiment with various brands, types of cameras before you commit to spending lots of money. If you're routinely disappointed in your results or find that your camera routinely malfunctions, prevents you from taking photographs at the optimum moment, then when moving past trains don't make excuses, invest in a better camera. And to add to that, I would say you always talk to other photographers that you know of, whether they're trained photographers or just camera enthusiasts or wildlife enthusiasts. Talk to them, because some of the same picture taking techniques are used with trains or any other type of photography. One of the things he talks about is shutter lag. The time delay between you press the shutter and when the exposure is made. Shutter lag is an enemy of trained photographers. Trained photography is something that you have to be quick and prepare ahead of time. And even the best photographers, sometimes those trains are moving pretty fast and they will sneak up on you as the photographer. And you'll be concerned about it. Photographing trains is tricky. You need to be prepared when on trackside. Prep your camera before you expect to use it. Make sure you have sampled space left on the memory card or film roll. Check the battery and make sure all your camera operations are working properly. I usually start out with a fully charged battery. I also put in a fresh chip all the time. Mine's a digital camera, and I kind of make sure that I put in a memory chip that fits the amount of photographs you might be taking. Generally a 2 meg will probably do, but if you're out on a vacation, the cards go up to 16 megs, and sometimes you want that in order to take a couple, 2-3 days or 4 days, how many pictures you're taking, all on one chip. One of the things he talks about is distracting elements in the foreground and background that may detract from your primary subject, which is the train. Small adjustments at angles and lighting can make a difference. And one of the things that I suggest is, if you're looking for a particular shot, a lot of times lately there's been a couple of steam engines that came in. Before the steam engine comes in, take pictures of some of the freight trains that come through or metro trains, and that'll give you an idea whether your light settings are fine and also how your camera is performing. Just don't wait till the main attraction shows up. Don't fall in a rut. You usually can take pictures either in landscape or in vertical, and you want to vary your photographs depending on what you're shooting and what you're doing. One of the things that I found helpful when doing train photography is a lot of almost every issue of trains has a photographic section, usually about 8 to 10 pictures per section. And a lot of times train photographs are interesting because they're not always trains. They might be the gates, they might be a section house, or it might be a yard scene. There can be various types of other items, even when shooting a steam train. Sometimes the photographer photographs the wheels of the engine, sometimes the bell, sometimes the brake system, and each of those components on a steam train can be quite attractive and interesting to look at when you look at your photographs. And also, when you go through by looking at a train magazine, they're not always photographing always the engine. It could be various other parts. You might get if you're near a lake or something like that where you get a reflection, sometimes you take a picture of the reflection and you get the train in it. There's all different types of things that you should be aware of. And frankly, if you've done any photographic, whether it be wildlife photography or any outdoor photography, some of the same techniques that you use for that can certainly be applied to trains and give you some different aspects of taking your picture. The other thing is, with trains in particular, always be aware of the trains. You don't want to be near or on the tracks when you're doing that. That can be lethal. Trains move faster than you think they do, even freight trains. And also the other thing about trains is they're loud and noisy, so therefore if there should be two trains coming, one from let's say from the east and another one from the west, you may not be aware that there's two trains coming. So be alert all the time. Stay away off the tracks, far enough off the tracks. My recommendation is have a telephoto lens, which brings your a picture that normally might look like a great distance from the tracks but makes it up close. You definitely want to have a telephoto lens. The other thing that you want to have is a wide angle lens, because sometimes the cars that you're picking, trying to take pictures of, or the engines, are longer than what your normal lens can take in. So you want to have that ability, the adjustability to capture what you're trying to shoot and get everything into the frame. I think the best way to learn if you're a beginning photographer is just shoot as many pictures as you can and then go look back at your photos and see what you like and what you don't like, and that'll give you an idea. As you take more pictures, you become a better photographer. Practice makes perfect.
And I'm still practicing. Oh, thank you.
You're right about that framing your photo. 9 times out of 10, if I'm not taking a shot from 40 foot back, my picture of an engine winds up looking like a blackboard.
Yeah. Yes. That could be tricky.
Yeah, but you know,
It's embarrassing when it's a yellow engine.
Well, the nice thing is when you're taking a whole mess of pictures, you can always select the best ones, and usually, even if you take 50 photographs, you usually can find 10 that are worth showing other people.
mine is usually 1 or 2 out of
Yeah,
50.
you're right about that too.
But I guess the one thing you should talk about with the photography to get the trains, remember to stay clear, stand back from the tracks.
Right.
Unfortunately, it happens all too often where somebody gets killed alongside the tracks, taking pictures, getting too close, or even standing in the tracks. And, you know, the trains are quieter now.
Right.
And people having earbuds in, you know, or creating a noise louder than the train that's coming.
And more communities are demanding that the trains not sound the horn as they're approaching grade crossings.
Now, yes, and believe it or not, there are a lot of no horns zones, but it's at the engineer's discretion. If something's wrong, he will blow the horn, and the communities can complain all they want. But there's still a lot of people using trains for shortcuts, you know, or don't go walk down to the proper crossing.
Well, even if you're in a supposedly safe location, and I took a train trip to Vegas, and from Vegas, I forgot what the stop is. It was in, I think, Arizona that they let us off, and then you take a bus down to Vegas. But coming back, we arrived, or as always, a couple hours before the Amtrak chief came in, and it was kind of cool. They had you had I think during that hour or 2 hours, there must have been 6 freight trains that came roaring through, and I got to admit, I'm 60. Back then, I was 60, and these freight trains, even though you're at the
Last week.
at the depot there and you're set back, you forget about how much dust and smoke and other types of things that they stir up. And I got to admit, I was nervous. I mean, being there. I mean, you felt safe, but you were definitely conscious of the noise and the sound and everything else that was going on when a train's coming by at 60 miles an hour, and they're not going to slow down. So it was both an interesting, but yet I have to admit, a little bit of a frightening experience, which is probably a good thing, because then it puts your safety antennas on, and you're concerned, about where you're at and what you're doing. So, but it is in this particular town, you're out in the desert, so a lot of sand. You're amazed that, like in Chicago, you don't get as much maybe dirt kicked up, but here there was a lot of it.
Well, cinder and stone don't fly quite like sand and tumbleweed, but people forget that a freight moving at 30 or a passenger moving at 60 creates a slipstream, and the slipstream is far more likely to suck you into the train than shove you out of the way of the train.
Right. Yes. And one of the things I will say, there were 2 examples of when I first bought my camera. There was flooding along the Mississippi River, and we were the only train that got out of Chicago that day. And when we got to the Mississippi River, they didn't stop in the normal location for the first, which was in Iowa. And but one of the things that I noticed with a digital compared to the old photography, which was film, I was taking pictures at night, 8 o'clock at night, when it was just dusk, and there was no way I could have been taking those same pictures with a film photography. But with the digital, it allows you a lot more light, and even the time when I was talking about the Arizona stop at the railroad station, that was around midnight, and between the light that you were getting off the station and the street lighting and everything, you could still take pictures, which I'm pretty certain I wouldn't have been able to take, and certainly not show up well with the old film that you had. I wasn't that good of a, I'm sure with using various techniques and stuff you could maybe get a picture out, but with the digital it was far more forgiving and also more flexible than the old cameras used to be.
You ought to read a book by Winston Link.
Oh, his book is, I love his books. There was a documentary of he documented the last era of steam, and I think it was Norfolk and Southern, or Norfolk Western Railroad. So yeah, if anybody could get a hold of that, and you're a railroad buff, you'll think you died and went to heaven looking at those photographs. And especially, they showed a couple where he had his night flashes up, and my God, it was just incredible, the lighting that he was getting.
Oh yeah, there are 3 books out by him. Actually, the third one came out. It was put together by the people working at the Winston Lake Museum. But it basically told the story on how he took his pictures. Mm-hmm. And that's really amazing.
When did that come out? You know, roughly a few years ago?
Yeah. About 3 years ago, 4. Yes, sir.
For those of you who are thinking far enough in the future and are already starting to fill out your Christmas wish list, Mike's Train House has issued a 4-car Rail King double-door plugged boxcar set for the Canadian Pacific Holiday Train, complete with very extensive graphics, LED holiday lights, and Uncle Brian was kind enough to remind me that the MTH catalog also shows the power units to go with it. And they list for $319.95. They will not last long, so either talk to your hobby shop manager or get your letter to Santa in quick. If you have been fortunate enough to see the YouTube or the commercial footage released to the news services, the train is fantastic. Scrooge would be running to the hobby shop to get these. They're just beautiful, beautiful cars. And the other really unique thing that in power stock is Grabowski's Hobbies in Scranton. Well, they're in Pennsylvania near Scranton. I don't know if they're in the corporate limits anymore with their new store. It's been a few years since I've been there. They're celebrating their 40th anniversary, and they have entered into a partnership with Lionel, and they're producing a Laurel line L&WV trolley. It will sell for $84.95. It has two reach poles for the power line on the top. It's a cute little thing, if cute is fair to address a piece of power stock. It's similar in design to the Christmas Village trolley that Lionel issued a few years ago, and it would make a nice piece on any layout, especially if you have somebody who's from the East Coast, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, over by there. It's a wonderful hobby, but it's a terrible thing. You just can never get everything you want.
Ah, true. Well, you can go there on your way up to Allentown, Bethlehem.
Well, tell your wife or your mom or your dad or your significant other that you're going to take a trip to Steamtown National Park and get lost while you're looking for a cup of coffee and wind up at Grabowski's. It's still one of the few places that I can call on the phone and get one of the special edition box cars or hoppers or tankers when we're fortunate enough to have a new grandchild in the family. The last one I picked up actually came, it was the hopper, actually came with the booties. Yeah, my wife has one of those special edition cars for each of our 3 kids, and I don't think she will ever give them up to the kids.
Yeah, I'm glad Lionel took that over from K-Line.
Finally. Took them long enough.
True.
And 2 weeks ago, and unfortunately I missed it, I wanted to do it, but my wife wasn't feeling well. CTA trotted out their heritage fleet and had vintage L cars in operation on the Lake Street L, and they had vintage streetcars and buses downtown. Now, some of the buses I remembered from my mom taking me to the Museum of Science and Industry as a child. Some of them I remembered from going to high school on, and some of them I remembered from when I smashed up my car and I still had to go to work. And when you got to be at work at midnight, you better not miss a bus or a train. Back in the days of the rancid Trap-It.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we'll get back. We'll get back to some other stuff later. I'll give Uncle Brian a chance to talk.
No, that's it. I'm just having trouble talking tonight. I definitely am not a professional. But we can do some steam news.
Please.
Out of the California Railway Museum, they finally got a couple more Santa Fe steam locomotives all dolled up. One of the 2900s, the 2925, which has been sitting in Sacramento for a while. And they had it stripped down and taken the asbestos off and everything. But for some reason, they never got around to painting it, so it became a target for graffiti artists. That and the 5021, which is a 210-4. And they finally, the volunteers and everybody got together. They got the money and finally got in there, scrubbed it down and to best they could, and got them all repainted, and they're looking like they're coming just off the showroom floor. And they're on display actually near the Sacramento station at this time.
Those are showpieces. They'll not go back into active service.
No, if you want to see one in service, so you can go to Albuquerque. They got a 2900. They just finished testing, and they've got a little bit more tweaking to do on it, but they're going to run. They're going to run an engine. It's the 2900 series are 484s, largest Santa Fe had, largest and heaviest. They're war babies.
Were they coal or diesel? Coal or fuel oil?
Fuel oil. And 261, the Milwaukee Road 484. She's running trips September and early October. They're running out of Minneapolis Junction. And still a good, with the colors coming up. Baldwin Light Pacific, number 425, the 4 1/4 for the Reading and Blue Mountain and Northern, is running fall trips all during the month of October for its fall colors, going from Reading, Pennsylvania, up to Jim Thorpe and return.
What's the latest news out of the Cheyenne shops?
Hey, the engine's apart and parts are being fixed, and they're starting to put her together.
Cool.
Hey, they got to. You got another. They said you got what? Another year and a half before it's due to run. So don't worry. It's just trying to get it here to Chicago.
Yes.
The future of NW 611. After the running last year, they did come out and the management informed the people at the Virginia Transportation Museum that it will no longer support a joint NS Museum trains steam program. And if they're going to run, they're going to have to work with Amtrak. So that means more than likely there'll be an Amtrak locomotive in the consist. And all the cars got to be Amtrak certified. Probably cost a little bit more. And also, if Amtrak is required, they will require it, and that way they get involved. Hopefully, it'll come under the umbrella with their $400 million insurance policy. And Amtrak was, friendly to it in the past, and they got the people there that will listen and try to work with them. That's one nice thing about it.
As long as Amtrak's first words were not, No way.
Yeah, well, you got Mr. Mormon still. Up until the end of December, he's co-sitting on the chair of Amtrak. So, and there's a free engine for a good home. The Pickaway County Fairground is looking for a home for engine 106. 106 is a saddle tanker built by the American Locomotive Company at Paterson, New Jersey in 1920. And the train is not in the plans of the future for the fairgrounds. So they would like to see it preserved. They would like to see it preserved locally, but what it is, they don't want to see it cut up for scrap. So that's why you pay for the move, but we'll give it to you. And like to see a civic organization have it. The engine was used by the Sturm and Dillard Company, which was established in 1927. They used it to deliver sand and gravel throughout World War II. Engine 106 was placed in the fairgrounds in 1976. No payment is required to take the train, but the new owner need to be able to move it to a new destination. We're talking 50 tons of locomotive here. So, not that bad. Not that bad a weight.
50 tons empty.
Yeah, it's a whole lot of train. They need to set it off on rails put on it. And there's no deadline on when the fair board needs to find a home for the train. But ideally, it would be before construction begins on the new fairgrounds. Bethlehem Company 111. Locomotive 111 is a fireless 040F locomotive built in 1941 by Heisler. Steam is used by this locomotive is generated by a stationary steam engine, and that steam is charged up in the boiler. Basically, it's a big thermos. And we're going to stop, and we'll do part 2 after this word for station identification.
You're listening to Chicago Junction on Jack-O-Lantern 89.7 WRHS FM Norwich and the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network from the John DeVita Broadcast Center on Monday, October the 16th, the year 2017. And this is Jack-O-Lantern 89.7 WRHS FM Norwich, Illinois. And now back to Chicago Junction and our panel.
Oh, welcome back, folks. And as we were saying about this locomotive, the one advantage of a fireless cooker is that it does not produce smoke or sparks. It is particularly beneficial in operating in industries where fire hazard exists. The Railroad Museum of Pennsylvania is in the process of cosmetic restoring this Heisler locomotive. Recently, the lead paint had been stripped and by an abatement contractor, and then the museum volunteers have installed new jacketing and continue to clean the road grime from various parts. They will paint it in a safety orange above the wheels and black below by October. Halloween colors.
The fireless engines.
The number 111 will once again be put on display in the rolling stock hall. So it'll be inside the museum. They already have a fireless cooker in there. The largest one built. That's an 080 that was used by the Power and Light.
One of the uses of the fireless was switching on docks, correct? Because they wouldn't have to haul a tender, so they could get an extra box car.
Well, you could say that if you want, but what it was used especially when loading ammo around ammo depots and such like that. You use that. They sit there. You fix up the ammo. You could actually fill up 600 psi of steam, and that charge would normally last you at least 6 to 8 hours.
I could see where it would be beneficial when you're rearming a battleship where the main guns use bagged charges.
Well, it's not just bag charges. Any explosives. You know, the explosives that we used during Vietnam are different than the explosives we used during World War II. Especially the plants where the explosives were made. It was beneficial for that.
Yeah, they probably had one they used out at the old Joliet Arsenal.
Oh, yeah. And here's some good news also. The locomotive that's been in the news off and on for the past year, Polson Logging Number 2, from the Mid-Continent Railway Museum. The gentleman who owned the locomotive and then rebuilt it and had the accident with his wife, and the museum wanted to do nothing to do with it or run the engine or anything. Well, when they lost their case, and the locomotive is on its way to Oregon. Skip Lighters is chain loaded, and he's headed for her new home in Oregon. Volunteer the friends who wish the locomotive could have stayed in Wisconsin. Help Leiter prepare the locomotive for loading, along with a four-person team from the Oregon Coast Scenic Railroad, where Number 2 will be going to. Mostly a group of men and a few women began work, moved it up a purposely tapered rail ramp. By Tuesday, the job was finished. They had Wisconsin gave them all the loading permits, and on its way. And we wish them well. Now, on a lighter note.
Okay.
On a lighter note. Scranton, Pennsylvania. More than 5,000 people visited Scranton's Electric City Trolley Museum last weekend to see the model railroad that was built as a joke by HBO's Last Week Tonight with John Oliver. I happened to see the program. My wife was actually watching it. She had taped it. She says, "Oh, you got to see this." And she showed me the segment about the fun he made of a story from the weather station in Scranton, and then it showed the train set that he made for the TV station. But anyway, a model train running in the background of a local Scranton television's weather segment had become a running gag on the HBO show in recent months. But many local Scranton residents thought Oliver was making fun of their community and its train. To prove them wrong, the comedian had HBO build an irresponsibly large train set for the TV station, posted a video segment about it on YouTube, warning its vulgar and crude language. WNEP TV Scranton took Oliver up on the offer, accepted the train, but it was too big to put in the background of the weather segment. Instead, the television station gave it to the Electric City Trolley Museum for display. The train set was unveiled to the public September 22nd. The multi-level train set features a number of Northeast Pennsylvania's landmarks, including the Lackawanna Station Hotel, Delaware, Lackawanna Western's Tuckahanna Viaduct. Museum manager Wayne Hiller tells Trains News Wire that 5,100 people came to the museum to see the train over the weekend, and more than 600 rode the trolley. Last weekend's crowds represented approximately a sixth of the museum's annual visitation, which is unusual, usually about 2,800 people. We have been swamped, but it gives us a great opportunity to show off the museum.
I only have one question.
Yes, sir.
Is it nicer than the train set that was in The Sopranos?
Yes. Well, depending upon what you were going for. Like I said, it was made with large-scale trains, using large-scale, but there were 2 loops of Lionel O-gauge track higher up. So
Every once in a while, a train pops up, going all the way back to Jackie Gleason and the Lucy Show.
yeah,
The Lucy Show with the Christmas show with the 4 Santas, and
well, I remember
Little Ricky with the Lionel train set with the orange box with the Lionel printing on it.
Well, I remember the Lionel set when Lucy was buying all the toys and showing how small the apartment really is to Ricky. And the minute he came in, and all of a sudden you heard beep, and there was the Santa Fe Super Chief running around on the floor.
You know, it's strange what pops up in your head. I can remember as a kid, I'm going to say it's like 1958, 1959, watching Mr. Ed, and here on TV is a full commercial for Lionel trains, and the thing that stuck in my mind most was the executive inspection car,
Yep. But
which I believe was a DeSoto. Might have been a Dodge, but it was big.
yeah. Hiller says the museum is proud to host the layout and is just another piece of Scranton's rich history and pop culture. Railroading is in the people's blood here in Scranton. I talk to people every day. You say, oh, my grandfather was a motorman in Scranton. My dad was a conductor for the DLW. It's in everyone's blood. Plus, not too far from there was the Glen Alden mine. That Glen Alden mine with that rich anthracite coal came out. That's where the blue coal came from. And they sponsored The Shadow. Oh, yes.
I just happened to have turned on classic radio at 1:30 this afternoon and listened to an episode of The Shadow.
That's good. But yeah, see, everybody's, you know, we're at the time of the year where everybody remembers what they used to see and how the trains popped up. Yeah, yes, the slot cars came and took over, but slot cars are gone and trains are still here.
Slot cars in the attic.
Okay, here we are. National Laboratory. Government researcher creates easy-to-use signal shunting device to prevent grade crossing collisions. Now, this will be something interesting for Operation Lifesaver. Chicago. Date Point, Chicago. A device that mimics the presence of a train could solve the problem of trains hitting stuck vehicles at railroad crossings, according to ScientX's website, physicalphys.org. By faking the presence of a train, a stuck vehicle on the tracks could give advance warning for oncoming trains to stop and stall for time, claims inventor Derek Plant, a technical specialist at the Fermi National Accelerator Laboratory, also known as Fermilab, located just outside Batavia, Illinois, near Chicago. After studying how railroad signaling systems work, his invention, the Ghost Train Generator, was developed in his spare time using techniques and principles he learned over his almost 2 decades at Fermilab. It is currently in the patent application process by Fermilab's Office of Technology Transfer. Railroad signals are tied to block signal blocks, segments of track that range from a mile to several miles in length. When a train is on the tracks, its metal wheels and axles conduct both rails, forming an electric circuit through the tracks to trigger the signals. These signals inform other trains not to proceed while one train occupies a block, avoiding pileups. I love some of these writers.
Supposed to.
Maintenance of way crews often shunt signal circuits in a similar way with purposeful applied cables. Plant decided that the ghost train generator to be useful in a pinch needed to be small, portable, and easily applied. The answer to achieving these features lies in strong magnets and special wire. Put one magnet on one rail, one magnet on the other, and the device itself mimics electrically what a train would look like to a signaling system. In theory, this would be carried in vehicles that are a high risk for getting stuck on crossings: semis, tour buses, and first response vehicles. Keeping it just like you would a fire extinguisher, just behind the seat or in an emergency compartment. Once the device is deployed, the train would receive a signal that the tracks were obstructed and stop. When the driver of a stuck vehicle could call for an emergency help using the hotline posted at all crossings. And we have a phone call at this time. Well, caller, who do we have?
Mystery challenger. How you guys doing?
Would our mystery guest sign in, please?
Jack Ryan here.
All right. Your Eminence.
Yeah, how's things going, guys?
Well, we haven't burned the place down yet.
Well, sure wish I was there, which I've not been able to get out of the house lately. And one thing it seems, never mind, I don't want to run down all my problems. Lately, if I didn't have bad luck, I'd have no luck at all, you know.
Well, that's true, you know, but you got to remember the doctors. You know, doctors were like that with me over a month ago.
Yeah.
Kept me restricted, so.
I'm glad we have them.
Oh, so true, so true.
Yeah, yeah. So, is anybody interested in the Cubs game?
What did they do?
Well, it's the top of the second. The Cubs got 2 outs. They got a 1-run lead already. Now it's true. Now they're going to the bottom of the second. The Cubs are out. But the kid that John Jay led off with a single, and he went to second, and I don't know. The real bad pitch, and then got to third, and he scored. So anyway, that's it. That's it. I don't want to change the subject too much.
What's the score, Jack?
1-0, Cubs winning.
Well, let's hope they keep it up.
That's all. Okay. You'll be there soon.
Well, thank you very much there, Jay.
Hey, listen, guys, hang in there.
All right, you too, sir.
Remember, how does it go? Happy rails to you.
Happy rails.
Happy rails.
We're sitting here trying to make a good verse out of it. Okay. Oh, that was nice.
That was nice.
That was nice. Okay. Here we go with international news. Rio Tinto train completes first crewless trip. Perth, Australia. Officials with the Australian mining company Rio Tinto say they've successfully operated a driverless train on a 60-mile stretch of tracks in Western Australia. In previous tests, Rio Tinto locomotives operated across the route in autopilot mode, but with a crew still present in the cab. This is the first test in which the locomotive's operations were overseen remotely from Rio Tinto's command center in Perth. Monday's test is a step forward towards fulfilling Rio Tinto's 2012 announcement that it intended to spend $518 million to automate its freight trains. The effort, known collectively as AutoHaul program, came after the company purchased a number of remotely operated trucks. Rio Tinto officials had expected that driverless locomotives would go into service by 2014, but anticipated difficulty with software pushed their estimate back to 2018. The successful pilot run puts us firmly on track to meet our goal of operating the world's first fully autonomous heavy-haul, long-distance rail network, said Chris Salisbury, Rio Tinto's Iron Ore's chief executive. He told the Australian. Rio Tinto officials say the automated train will help improve their safety standards, and the programming will automatically respond to speed changes and alarms. It will also reduce costs and help the company maintain its competitive advantage as the mining industry endures a worldwide slump. The autonomous railroad will still be required to meet Australian safety standards and receive regulatory approval before the technology is installed system-wide.
So the same people that allow land trains are now going to allow ghost trains.
Yes.
And just exactly how does this robot train react to, people on the track or animals on the track?
Don't know. That's why they only did a 60-mile stretch, and they still need approval for the whole length. But like a couple of their other mining roads, it's mostly isolated. That's why they were able to do it.
No.
It's like, I'm still trying to figure it, and I can't understand why you hear a bit higher yelling. They want to do that here by having just an engineer in the locomotive. But when you read the safety, when you read the book of rules, the engineer is supposed to be restricted from doing everything in the cab for personal safety. How can you talk on the radio, keep your eye on the tracks, look for signals, and then talk on the radio? Oh, we got a work group coming up, da da da. And they think by actually making it all remote control, nothing's going to happen. So
maybe they figure that they'll sell them a lot of ghost train cables for their work crews.
Yeah, well, that's a good idea. Metra finally has joined the ranks of having a heritage locomotive. One of Metra's oldest passenger locomotives is sporting a colorful scheme to match one that it came with in 1977. About 100 Metra officials, passengers, and rail fans gathered at the South Street station to celebrate 40 years of continuous service for the EMD F40PH locomotive by wrapping it in a seafoam blue, orange-black colors of predecessor Regional Transportation Authority. I'm not sure anyone could have predicted in 1977 that the locomotives then being delivered would still be in everyday use after 4 decades, says Bruce Nelson of the Shoreline Interurban Historical Society. How many people drive a 40-year-old car several hundred miles every day? That speeds up to 79 miles an hour. Metro official says members of the Shoreline Society raised all the money necessary to buy the materials, pay for the labor to wrap the locomotives. Metro crews completed the job during a few days in early September. EMD number 100, that was built for the RTA, along with 27 other locomotives in the late 70s, to replace the older E and F units in commuter service in the Chicago area. The first group of F-40s would go on to serve the entire system of commuter rail lines that would be joined under the Metro banner in the 80s. They would be also joined by 90 more F-40s of various designations, currently more than any other railroad, Metro officials say. In keeping with Metro's custom of naming locomotives after significant individuals or nearby villages and cities, railroad officials renamed number 100 the village of LaGrange, after LaGrange, Illinois, the historic home to EMD, where this locomotive and thousands others were made in the 20th century. Metro CEO Don Orsino told the crowd about his days as an engineer for Metro and how the locomotive quickly became the backbone of the railroad. These F-440 PHs have been in commuter service longer than any other locomotive type in North America. Their longevity is both a tribute to the excellence of our maintenance program and a commentary to the need to provide public transportation systems with a high level of capital funding that allow us to continue to renew our assets. Officials say Metro has rebuilt number 100 3 times in 40 years, in 1987, 1996, and in 2009. The start-stop nature of commuter service wears very hard on a locomotive, says Metro Chairman Norm Carlson. The fact that Metro's mechanical department has maintained these locomotives to a standard that enables Metro to maintain a 95% on-time performance record month after month is impressive, to say the least. F-40s and their lighter axle loadings are exclusively used on former Chicago Northwestern lines to accommodate the older infrastructure. Officials say that the locomotive will tour the entire Metro system in the upcoming months.
Well, if 100 was renamed Village of LaGrange, what was it originally named? I know it didn't say that in the article, but I know 114 is City of Chicago.
I do not know. Perhaps one of our 12 listeners will inform us on Facebook.
Well, I know what 114 is because I have one by MTH and one by K-Line. Before we run out of the last 3 grains of sand in the hourglass, I brought in 2 Lionel rail cranes. One is the 6560 out of the late 50s, early 60s with its painfully bright red cab and the 2 axle trucks, and the other is the January of '82 production Union Pacific rail crane with 3 axle trucks. Now, Lionel has continued to produce this. The newest one is a O-scale legacy rail crane that can do everything but move on the track. You can remotely lift the arm. You can remotely operate either of the 2 hooks on the legacy model. There is a video posted on the Chicagoland Lionel Railroad Club website of one of the legacy cranes going through its paces. But this is, if this was a TV show, they would call this piece an evergreen because I know of at least 6 variations on this car. I have another one at home in chassis markings, but I was afraid to take it off the shelf because if I take it off the shelf and don't put it away, my daughter will acquire it for her train set because she's just crazy about anything chessy. And I'm not quite ready to let that one go just yet. But the 6560, when I got it, it didn't have any line, and it didn't have a hook. I had I was able to get a repro hook, and I was able to get some black fish line. It's not quite as heavy as it should be, and one of these days I'm going to have to restring it. But it always looks good. All you got to do is throw a flat car or a short-sighted gondola in front of it, and you got a work train.
Yep. Oh, definitely.
And it really looks good with a 44-ton center cab hauling it down the rail.
Both of those look really good. The only thing you need is some kind of disabled car that could write.
The hook is the wrong kind of car for writing equipment. You need that one. I believe would be the two-sided hook, the one that looks a bit like a ship's main anchor.
Okay.
I try to get the terms right, Brian.
No. It's okay.
The Legacy has the mustache hook on the short part of the arm by the bend, so that you're not stressing the arm to the point where you get metal fatigue and metal failure.
Okay.
But this, if you were to take and put one of the canisters off the atomic waste car by the side of the track, you could pick it up quite easily with the short hook. I have seen pictures in Classic Toy Train and a couple other places where people have created hazmat scenes on their railroad. So you can do all kinds of good stuff. As someone reminded me, you're not modeling prototype, you're modeling imagery.
I got one other item before we close. The Milwaukee Train Show's coming up. That's always a great event for train lovers.
Train Fest.
And no matter what layout you have, they have equipment there for all of them. And it's going to be November, I think, 11th and 12th. It's Saturday and Sunday, second week in November.
Second week, yeah, the second weekend.
So just a reminder for all you train buffs out there. Bring your cameras.
When we do our radio program next month, I'll have a listing of some of the holiday displays.
Okay.
Christmas displays. I got it out. You can come back and get me.
I'm trying to get my hands on an elf on the shelf to put in a Lehigh Valley hopper, the tall hopper, so he can cruise around the layout. And if I can't get an elf, I may have to settle for the mensch on the bench. Or I may just get one of each and let everybody have a good time.
There you go. On those notes, thank you again, gentlemen.
Thank you.
And as our fearless leader has said, happy rails to you. As our express comes into the station, we want to thank you for joining us on our journey through the wonderful world of trains. Chicago Junction is a production of the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network and can be listened to on the web at www.wcen.org. WindyCityHometown.com, where you can listen to tonight's broadcast and all of our past episodes. So sample some of the, and also sample some of the other programs that are being offered. I am your announcer, Brian Valou. Till next month, when we journey to Chicago Junction.
You have been listening to Chicago Junction on Jack-O-Lantern 89.7 WRHS FM Norwich and the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network from the John DeVita Broadcast Center on Monday, October the 16th, the year 2017. Chicago Junction was produced by Jack Ryan, directed by John DeVita, and our special thanks to radio station manager Kevin Zeflik of WRHS FM Norwich and the executive producer of Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network, Mr. John Chikanda. This broadcast was pre-recorded on Thursday, October the 12th, the year 2017. Until next time, please be safe and thanks for listening. And this is Jack-O-Lantern 89.7 WRHS FM Norwich, Illinois.